Welcome to the White Knight Theater, episode 21 of The Dark One, the prototype of the death penalty notice. After the meeting, Luo Fei and Mu Jianyun, both with some free time on their hands, began to review past case details. To Mu Jianyun's surprise, Luo Fei's thoughts seemed to align with the murderers in some ways. Meanwhile, Zheng Rihua had traced the location from which the death penalty notice was posted online. At that moment, Han Hao, Yin Jian, and Zheng Rihua arrived at the cultural company to search for clues. The person in charge of receiving them was Mr. Liu, the company's general manager. Zheng Rihua picked up Mr. Liu's business card, examining and playing with it with a smile. Han Hao only glanced at it out of politeness before continuing his conversation. "Is everyone here today?" he asked. "Yes, everyone is here, except for the accountant and me. They're all working in the hall," Mr. Liu replied. "Let's go take a look," Han Hao suggested. Zheng Rihua casually stuffed the business card into his pocket and followed Han Hao to the hall. The space was divided into 10 small cubicles by desks. The employees inside looked up curiously at the unexpected visitors. Han Hao quickly scanned the room, then furrowed his brow. Out of the 10 people, 8 were young women and 2 were men. One was the young man with the greasy side-parted hair, and the other was a short, plump young man shaped like a winter melon. It was hard to associate any of them with a dangerous criminal. Han Hao turned to Zheng Rihua, whose expression was even more disappointed. He let out a bitter chuckle. "It can't be a false accusation, right? We are among the first wireless network clients in the city. Don't judge us by our small company size. Our working conditions are top-notch." "What's going on?" Han Hao asked. "Have you finished the check?" he continued. "Mr. Liu, there's something strange. I've checked all the company's computers, and none of them were assigned this IP address today," Zheng Rihua said. "What do you mean?" Han Hao pressed. "Did you make a mistake?" "Well, this address is indeed from the company's network, and a machine did log in around 3 in the afternoon. But it wasn't one of our company's computers," Zheng Rihua explained. "If it wasn't our company's computer, how could it log into our network?" Mr. Liu asked. "Mr. Liu, I didn't mention the password," Zheng Rihua said. "This is a wireless network without a login password. Technically, any computer equipped with a wireless signal receiver can log into the network through this company's server within the signal coverage area." "So, how large is the signal coverage area where someone can log into this company's network?" Han Hao asked. "This has far exceeded our control. The suspect doesn't even need to enter the building. If they have a laptop, they can access the network from anywhere within a radius of 30 to 50 meters around the building." Han Hao was speechless, forced to accept the frustrating reality. With such a wide coverage area, it would be too easy for the suspect to find a secluded spot. The once promising lead had suddenly become worthless. Seeing the expressions on Han Hao and the others, Mr. Liu immediately became angry. "Why didn't you set a password? Now someone has exploited our company's network. Who's going to take responsibility for this?" The young man with the greasy hair hung his head, enduring the fat boss's scolding without daring to say a word. Zheng Rihua patted Mr. Liu's shoulder. "Mr. Liu, let it go. There's no need to blame him." "Why not?" Mr. Liu asked. "Because even if he set 3 layers of passwords, that guy could crack them in a matter of minutes," Zheng Rihua replied. "All right, let's leave it at that," Han Hao said. "Mr. Liu, thank you for your cooperation. We'll be on our way." "Captain, I knew this would be a wasted trip," Zheng Rihua complained. "If that guy can't even cover his tracks while logging into the internet, he's really bad at this. What's the point of issuing a death penalty notice and challenging the police?" "Come on, both of you, stop talking," Han Hao said. "I need to catch some sleep. Xiaoye, you drive. I'll keep watch." Zheng Rihua grumbled, seemingly complaining, but actually giving Yin Jian an out. Yin Jian understood and stopped talking, focusing on driving instead. 10 minutes later, the police car returned to the criminal police station. Zheng Rihua got out of the car and walked alone to the guest house. Although he was very tired, he didn't go back to his room to rest. Instead, he went to the room where Mu Jianyun was staying. Mu Jianyun was about to have dinner, so the door was open. Zheng Rihua walked straight into the room and closed the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" Mu Jianyun asked. "Of course, I'm here to talk about the case," Zheng Rihua replied. "What did you think I was here for?" "Hee hee. You really are a beauty. Even your room smells nice and refreshing, Zheng Rihua said with a grin. Talk about the case. Why did you close the door? Mu Jianyun asked. Well, didn't you and Han Hao also close the door when you talked? Zheng Rihua's behavior was somewhat presumptuous, but Mu Jianyun just laughed. She knew that the more reserved she was, the more pleased he would be. What do you really want to say? Mu Jianyun asked. You've come to my door, so why beat around the bush? Zheng Rihua said, I know Han Hao assigned you a special task, to investigate Luo Fei. From the case analysis, there are indeed many suspicious points about Luo Fei. In the 418 case, Luo Fei knew both victims, Yuan Zhibong and Meng Yun, and had close relationships with them. He was also the first to report the case. His previous behavior also had many puzzling aspects. When Inspector Zheng Haoming was murdered, Luo Fei was the first to arrive at the scene and also the one who reported it. That's just too coincidental. So Han Hao made this move, but it's not out of suspicion. You seem to know a lot. I underestimated you. What do you think? I'm also a legitimate member of the Special Task Force. In fact, I have access to more information about the 418 case than you do. Many things. Han Hao relies on me to do technical analysis. This is also a special task he gave me. Oh, what have you analyzed? Before the 418 case, there were some incidents at the police academy that seemed to be related to the 418 case. Are you aware of this situation? Han Hao didn't give me any relevant information, so tell me more. There were 4 recorded cases in the documents. Before the 418 case, there were punishment notices signed by Eumenides, the goddess of revenge, within the police academy. The font and style were similar to the death penalty notices we later saw. The recipients of the punishment notices were all police academy students who had committed minor offenses, and they were later punished accordingly. Of course, these punishments were far less severe than the death penalty, so they didn't attract much attention before. Oh, there's such a thing? Tell me more. There were 4 recorded cases in total. The first punishment notice appeared at the end of 1983. The listed offense was cheating in an exam, and the punishment was to be executed on the day the exam results were announced. After the results were posted, the student's score was 0. It was later discovered that the student's exam paper had somehow turned blank. When the student went to his instructor to complain, the name and student number on the paper were indeed in his own handwriting, so the matter was dropped. After the 418 case, the Special Task Force investigated this student, who admitted that he had cheated in the exam, but he couldn't figure out how his paper had been switched. It's quite interesting. What about the other cases? Episode 22 of The Dark One, Mu Jianyun's Hidden Mission. Due to the wireless network issue, Han Hao, Ying Jian, and Zheng Rihua returned empty-handed. After going back, Zheng Rihua came to Mu Jianyun and clarified the task Han Hao had given to her, which was to investigate Luo Fei. He also shared with her the cases related to the punishment notices, which seemed to have a close connection with the death penalty notices. The first punishment notice was for cheating in an exam. The second punishment notice was aimed at a female student in the police academy who had a habit of petty theft. On the day of the punishment, the girl went to take a shower in the bathroom. When she came out, she found that although her locker was still properly locked, all her clothes inside had vanished. The key to the locker was the only one, and the girl had been wearing on her wrist while showering. No one could figure out how Eumenides, the goddess of revenge, had taken the clothes from the locker. Mu Jianyun lowered her head in deep thought, apparently trying to figure out the perpetrator's modus operandi. However, she soon gave up and focused on listening to Zheng Rihua's continuation of the story. The third person to receive a punishment notice was a male student who enjoyed prying into others' privacy and spreading rumors, which made him quite unpopular. On the day marked for the execution of the punishment, the campus broadcast speakers suddenly came to life in the middle of the night, reading aloud 3 of the boys' diary entries, all of which contained extremely private information. It was later discovered that someone had broken into the broadcasting room and played a pre-recorded tape. The punished boy claimed that he had always kept his diary very carefully, almost never letting it out of his sight. He couldn't understand how Eumenides had learned the contents of his diary. The fourth recipient of a notice was also a male student whose offense was having a love affair with two girlfriends at the same time. On the night of the execution, the boy went to the campus dance hall, only to find both of his girlfriends there at the same time. His love scam was thus completely exposed. Afterwards, both girls said that they had received a note from the boy inviting them to the dance hall, but the boy clearly wouldn't have done such a foolish thing. This act was undoubtedly another trick by Eumenides, the goddess of revenge. What about the tape? Mu Jianyun asked. The one used in the third case, broadcasted through the campus radio. It should contain the voice of Eumenides, the goddess of revenge. Handwriting can be imitated, but a person's voice is hard to change, right? Indeed, Teacher Mu, you've hit the nail on the head. Impressive, impressive. This MP3 contains the original recording. Have a listen, Zheng Rihua said. Mu Jianyun put on the headphones and heard a nasal, muffled male voice. After listening for a few seconds, she frowned. This voice is quite strange, not quite normal. Simply put, he was pinching his nose. My goodness, pinching your nose like this sounds just like the recording. If that's the case, then this clue doesn't seem very valuable, she concluded. It wasn't before, but things are different now. Modern computer software has many functions you can't even imagine. Our people have processed this audio and can simulate what this person's voice would sound like under normal circumstances. Give it another listen, Zheng Rihua said, adjusting the MP3 player. Mu Jianyun heard the male voice in the headphones become much clearer and more natural. The voice seemed somewhat familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. This voice sounds quite young, doesn't it? That means 18 years ago. This person must have been a young man, she said. Then, using the software, they further simulated what this person's voice would sound like 18 years later in middle age. Mu Jianyun listened again, and her eyes widened in astonishment. The voice in the headphones had become deeper and more resonant. It's Luo Fei. Indeed, the slightly deeper voice in the MP3 is extremely similar to Luo Fei. It's the first thing that comes to mind, she said. Mu Jianyun's surprised expression gave Zheng Rihua a great sense of accomplishment. He showed off a bit, shaking his head. Now you see how important your task is, don't you? Does Han Hao know about this? She asked. No, thing riwari play. So why are you telling me about this case? You should be accountable to Han Hao. Can't you just find an excuse to talk to a beautiful woman? All right, I've told you now. I'll call Han Hao over right away, Mu Jianyun said. No. Aren't you betraying me? Zheng Rihua protested. Mu Jianyun looked into Zheng Rihua's eyes. Her gaze wasn't sharp, but it was piercing. Zheng Rihua soon backed down, giving a sheepish smile. All right, I'll tell the truth. I've only met Luo Fei a few times, but I really don't believe he committed those bloody crimes. At least the way he recalled the 418 case. The sorrow seemed genuine, and I get a good vibe from him. He's much more likable than Han Hao. So I thought I'd let you, the psychologist, probe a bit first, Zheng Rihua explained. All right, but I have one condition. I want all the materials you have, Mu Jianyun said. Deal. I'll go make a copy for you right now, Zheng Rihua agreed. Mu Jianyun inwardly smiled. Zheng Rihua acted entirely based on personal preference, not at all like a police officer. But he did have an endearing and innocent side. As for Luo Fei, this man who rarely showed his emotions, what secrets were hidden in his heart? Thinking of this, Mu Jianyun's brow furrowed again. October 22nd, 2355. Han Xiaohong had good living habits. She usually went to bed before 11 p.m., drinking a glass of red wine. Before sleeping always helped her enjoy a good night's rest. Han Xiaohong knew she was no longer young and needed to take care of herself to maintain her natural charm, which was a woman's greatest asset. 5 years ago, it was with this asset that she married into the enviable Dong family. Calling the Dong family a prominent family was no exaggeration. It was said that the previous generation of the Dong family had produced high-ranking officials at the provincial level. Han Xiaohong's husband was a distinguished member of the younger generation of the Dong family, serving as a permanent diplomat in a European country. With this connection, the foreign trade company Han Xiaohong managed in the country could hardly fail to thrive. Before the age of 30, She lived in a villa, drove luxury cars, and had become a prominent figure in the provincial city's high society. But tonight, Han Xiaohong couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned on her soft, comfortable waterbed, feeling an inexplicable irritation in her heart. Why was that? Was it because of the anonymous letter she received in the morning? To be honest, when she first saw the bizarre death penalty notice, Han Xiaohong didn't take it too seriously. Even calling the police was just a formality. After that incident spread online, similar threats were not uncommon. At first, Han Xiaohong was a bit nervous, but after 3 or 5 times, she became somewhat numb to them. Last month, the local police station caught a guy who made threatening phone calls. He was a thin, pale young man who cried his heart out when detained, completely inconsistent with the ferocious tone he used over the phone. These blackmailers were despicable and laughable, cowardly and incompetent. Otherwise, why would they hide in the corners and engage in such sneaky behavior? These people posed no real danger, and this was the impression that blackmailers had gradually formed in Han Xiaohong's mind. But this time, things seemed a bit different. Shortly after she called the police, officers came to her house to ask detailed questions. In the afternoon, more police arrived for reinforcement. One of them, a tall man named Xiong Yuan, claimed to be the captain of the special police force. This made Han Xiaohong's heart race a bit. What did the police's serious and formal approach mean? Some things should not be overthought, especially in the dead of night when one is alone. The accident half a year ago now replayed in Han Xiaohong's mind. Episode 23 of The Dark One, Midnight Call. In the case files provided by Zheng Rihua regarding the punishment notices at the police academy, Mu Jianyun heard the technically restored audio and was shocked to recognize Luo Fei's voice. She couldn't help but wonder, what secrets is Luo Fei hiding? On the other side, Han Xiaohong was tossing and turning, unable to sleep due to the appearance of the death penalty notice. Despite facing overwhelming criticism, Han Xiaohong insisted that it was just an accident. If only she hadn't been in such a rush to the company to place that delivery order. If only the vegetable vendor Xiong Guangzong had set up his stall more reasonably. If only her driving skills could have bypassed his stall. If only Xiong Guangzong hadn't been so hostile and backed down. If only there hadn't been so many onlookers egging her on and making it impossible for her to back down. If any one of Han Xiaohong's assumptions had held true, the subsequent troubles would never have happened. These thoughts had been swirling in her mind countless times over the past 6 months, but she rarely considered a more important question. How did the gear get shifted, and how did she step on the gas? She didn't want to think about it, and was afraid to think about it. Perhaps she had already come to believe the words she had repeated over and over. I just wanted to reverse. I just wanted to bypass Xiong Guangzong, but I accidentally shifted the wrong gear. Yes, I did shift the wrong gear. This is what the law has determined, and you have no right to accuse or threaten me. I've compensated financially and suffered reputational damage. What more do you want from me? Usually, when her thoughts reached this point, Han Xiaohong's mood would gradually calm down. She still had a good life, an enviable life. She couldn't tolerate this incident constantly haunting her and ruining her future. But today, the irritation in Han Xiaohong's heart surged like waves, impossible to calm. She felt an inexplicable fear. When Han Xiaohong saw the wall clock by the dim light of the night, she finally grasped the source of her fear. The content of the anonymous letter swam before her eyes. Death penalty notice, convict, Han Xiaohong, crime, intentional murder, execution date, October 23rd, executor, Eumenides. The clock's hands were ticking closer to October 23rd. Han Xiaohong's heart seemed pierced by the hands, making her feel extremely uncomfortable. At that moment, the telephone on the bedside table suddenly rang. In the quiet of the night, the ringing was especially grating. Han Xiaohong bolted upright in bed, first turned on the bedside lamp, and then reached for the receiver. Her cautious manner was as if she were holding a bomb, but there was no sound on the other end of the line. "Hello?" she said into the receiver, but there was still no response. Han Xiaohong could no longer contain herself. She dropped the receiver, got out of bed, and fled the bedroom as if escaping. only calming down slightly when she reached the living room and saw the police officers there. The leading officer was Xiong Yuan. Since the afternoon, he had been providing close protection for Han Xiaohong with 2 team members. At night, they rested in the living room. When the phone rang, he had already become alert. Seeing the frightened look of the person he was protecting, he quickly went over to her. "What's wrong?" he asked. "There was a strange phone call. When I answered, there was no sound on the other end," Han Xiaohong replied. Xiong Yuan signaled to one of his subordinates, who picked up the extension in the living room. The phone had already been equipped with a monitoring device. There was still no sound from the receiver. After about 10 seconds, a long beep indicated that the call had been hung up. "Little Zhang, check the information of the caller," Xiong Yuan instructed. "Ms. Han, we'll handle this. You should go back to your room and rest." The tracking of the call quickly yielded results. As expected, it was a China Unicom mobile phone number that didn't require registration of the user's name, making it impossible to identify the exact caller. So, Xiong Yuan called Han Hao. At that moment, Han Hao was crouched in the passenger seat of the car, still keeping a close watch on the villa's back window while taking Xiong Yuan's call. He didn't say anything at all. Han Hao asked. "No, not a single word," Xiong Yuan replied. "He's reminding us that the game has begun," Han Hao said. The time had reached 7:15 a.m. on October 23rd. Nothing had happened that night. Han Hao had stayed in the car until 4 a.m., when he switched shifts with Xiong Yuan and took a brief nap on the living room sofa. His long career as a criminal police officer had already accustomed him to this extremely irregular lifestyle. So, when it was time to wake up, he immediately became energetic and threw himself back into his work. Han Xiaohong, who had been comfortably enjoying the bedroom alone, now looked listless, completely lacking her usual radiant demeanor. After hesitating for a while, Han Xiaohong shared her thoughts with the police. "Captain Han, I don't want to go to work today. I think it's better for me to stay at home," she said. This change was not unexpected by Han Hao, and he had already prepared a response. "Of course, it's your choice, and we won't force you. We'll also stay here to protect you today. But you must understand that our police force is limited and can't serve you indefinitely. And that criminal, he'll keep targeting you. So what should you do?" Han Hao asked. "You can't just hide. You need to live and work normally as you usually do. The police have already set up a large-scale operation, waiting for that guy to make a move. Do you have a detailed plan? Can you really ensure my safety?" Han Xiaohong asked nervously. "I was just about to tell you. An hour ago, our special police officers had already conducted a detailed security check on your vehicle en route. When the time comes, the special police captain will personally drive you to the company. During this process, there will be police officers in front of and behind your car to protect you. You don't have to worry about any accidents. After you get out of the car, Captain Xiong will pretend to be your driver and stay close to you. The parking lot will also be filled with plainclothes police officers. No suspicious person will be able to approach you. There are also police officers inside your company building, disguised as security guards, property management staff, or even your company's employees. During this period, any food or drink delivered to your company will be safety checked by the police. These measures will absolutely ensure your safety today," Han Hao explained. "Okay, that's great. How should I cooperate with the police?" Han Xiaohong asked. "Just live your life as usual. By the way, there's one more thing you should know," Han Hao said, looking very serious. "What is it?" Han Xiaohong asked nervously. Episode 24 of The Dark One, The Bait on a Mousetrap. At midnight on October 23rd, a sudden phone call with no response on the other end terrified Han Xiaohong. This was not only a scare tactic, but also a provocation to the Special Task Force. Han Hao, as the team leader, was fully alert and prepared for the arrest operation. "Ms. Han, based on our preliminary investigation, the person who wants to attack you is likely a young or middle-aged man. He is relatively thin, with a height between 164 and 167 centimeters, and has a recent knife wound on his hand. Please pay close attention to the physical characteristics I just mentioned. Do not approach any man who fits this description at any time. Our plainclothes officers are all over 175 centimeters tall. During the operation, They will all be wearing brown or black woolen hats. No matter what happens, do not leave the sight of our officers. Do you understand? Han Hao explained it honestly. Han Xiaohong listened carefully and nodded vigorously. Yes, I understand. Han Hao glanced at his watch. It's almost time. Please get ready and leave at your usual time. Captain Xiong Yuan will accompany you shortly. I will arrange for the rendezvous near your company in advance. Han Xiaohong took a deep breath and returned to her bedroom without another word. Every day before leaving, she would spend half an hour on makeup. Today, however, her face was pale due to the stress. Yin Jian, standing beside Han Hao, quietly observed the conversation between the two. He couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the woman. At yesterday's tactical meeting, Yin Jian had suggested that Xiong Yuan drive directly to the entrance of the building. However, Han Hao vetoed the idea. The parking lot was crowded, which increased the danger, but it also provided a good location for plainclothes officers to hide. We've already set the trap. If we close it too early, how can we lure the criminal in? Han Hao reasoned. We must leave an opening, but the entire operation must be under our control. The parking lot of the building is that opening. I don't believe that with over a dozen officers around and the special police captain following closely, we can't protect the woman. If we can't, we might as well lock her in a safe. Yin Jian thought to himself that although Han Xiaohong was nominally the protected person, in Han Hao's eyes, she might as well be the bait on a mouse trap. However, he firmly believed that with the power of the trap, any experienced criminal who dared to make a move would be crushed before they could succeed. 20 minutes later, Han Hao and Yin Jian arrived at the city center civic square by car. The Deyi building, where Han Xiaohong's company was located, stood at the southeast corner of the square. Directly opposite the building was a 17-story hotel. The special task force had rented a room on the 6th floor of the hotel, from which they could clearly see the parking lot outside the Deyi building. The police set up surveillance equipment by the window, turning the room into the command center for the operation. When Han Hao and Yin Jian entered the room, they found Luo Fei and Mu Jianyun had already arrived. Luo Fei was helping the technicians adjust the angle of the monitors. Seeing the two men, Luo Fei greeted them. "Captain Han, how's the situation?" he asked. At midnight, Han Xiaohong received an anonymous call. The caller didn't say anything and hung up after about a minute. Other than that, everything is normal, Han Hao replied. Luo Fei, just as you expected, there won't be any major incidents tonight, Han Hao said, a hint of doubt in his voice as he looked at Luo Fei. Oh, what did you foresee? Han Hao asked. The murderer set the execution date on the death penalty notice for December 23rd, but I don't think he'll act too early. He's already revealed his plan to the police, who will surely be on high alert. So, he'll wait for the right opportunity. During this process, both sides will inevitably engage in some mutual probing and observation. It won't come to a head immediately. That's why I had a good night's sleep last night, Luo Fei explained. Of course, as frontline operatives, you and Captain Xiong must remain extremely vigilant throughout this phase. You can't afford to be as relaxed as I am, Luo Fei added, a touch of self-mockery in his voice for not being more involved. Indeed, Luo Fei looked well-rested, with a ruddy complexion and bright eyes, clearly having had a good night's sleep. Han didn't say much more. He glanced at Mu Jianyun and then walked back to the window, looking down and asking the technician nearby, "Have all the devices been tested?" "The team has tested everything," the technician replied, stepping forward to hand Han a microphone-equipped earpiece. This earpiece could be inserted into the ear canal and connected to a receiver via a thin wire. The receiver could be hidden inside the inner pocket of a jacket, making it hard for anyone nearby to detect the device. Captain Han's frequency is already set. You can speak now, and they will all hear you, the technician said. I'm 1002. Please respond, Han Hao said into the microphone. 002 is in position, came the response. 003, please respond, Han Hao continued. 03 is in position, the response came. 004, please respond, Han Hao said. 04 is in position, the response confirmed. Mu Jianyun, who was participating in a frontline operation for the first time, curiously leaned forward to the monitor, searching for the plainclothes officers. "Are all the plainclothes officers in position?" "I can't see them," he said. It was early rush hour, and the square was bustling with traffic and people. Besides office workers, there were also elderly and young people exercising in the morning. However, there was no one particularly conspicuous. Luo Fei smiled and continued. "There are 13 of our colleagues on the square. The newspaper vendor next to the building, the unlicensed taxi driver waiting for customers near the intersection, the sanitation worker cleaning the area, the bicycle attendant in the corner to the east, the middle-aged man resting by the fountain, the couple smoking and chatting by the entrance of the kiosk, and the guy who looks suspicious and is trying to sell pirated CDs to passersby. All of them are plainclothes officers. There are also 4 more officers in 2 groups hiding in cars in the parking lot, which you can't see for now." As he spoke, Luo Fei pointed at the monitor, indicating the positions of the plainclothes officers one by one. By the time he finished, Han Hao had also completed the command adjustment with his subordinates. "Unit 14, please respond," Han Hao said. "Unit 14 is in position," came the response. Excluding Han Hao's own unit, there were indeed 13 plainclothes officers on the square, just as Luo Fei had said. Mu Jianyun was amazed. Neither he nor Luo Fei had participated in the detailed pre-operation deployment, and all these plainclothes officers were Han Hao subordinates. It was incredible that Luo Fei could so accurately identify them from the crowd. Luo Fei, knowing what Mu Jianyun was thinking, continued to explain, "I spotted a flaw in that sanitation worker. He's sweeping too diligently. If he keeps this up, he won't be able to stand straight in 3 days. Look at real sanitation workers. They spend much more time standing and resting than bending over to work." Han Hao also heard Luo Fei's words. He frowned at the subordinate on the square and then picked up the microphone again. "I'm 1005, please respond. 005, please follow 001's instructions and take it easy. From now on, sweep for 1 minute and rest for 2 minutes. 5 understands," came the response. Mu Jianyun became even more curious. "What about the others? Do they have any flaws?" "They don't have any flaws, but I can roughly determine the positions of the other plainclothes officers based on the sanitation workers' location. You see, in such a large square, the positioning of plainclothes officers is very particular. They need to monitor every corner of the square, while also controlling all the major and minor entrances and exits. The intricacies of this can't be explained in just a few words. In our criminal investigation major, it's a separate elective course," Luo Fei explained. "Even if you can determine their positions, you can't precisely identify each person, can you? For example, the newspaper vendor has several people around him buying papers. How can you tell which one of them is our plainclothes officer?" Mu Jianyun asked. "In such a large space, to be ready for any possible chaotic situation, the plainclothes officers on duty usually have some unified accessories that can hint at their identity. These accessories are scattered in the crowd and are not conspicuous. However, if you look for them purposefully in a specific area, they're not hard to spot. Today, the hint for our officers is the brown or black woolen hats they are wearing," Luo Fei said. "Am I right?" Luo Fei's final question was directed at Han Hao. Han Hao glanced up at him. Though he didn't reply verbally, his expression clearly conveyed agreement. Then Han Hao checked his watch and looked at Yin Jian, who was coordinating the operation. He instructed Yin Jian to call Captain Xiong to check if they had set off yet. "Hey, Captain Xiong, have you guys left yet?" Yin Jian asked over the phone. "Ah, Captain Han, Captain Xiong said they've just exited the residential area and should arrive in about half an hour." Yin Jian relayed the information. "I'm 001. All units. The target will arrive in 30 minutes. From now on, proceed according to the plan. Execute the orders without reply," Han Hao announced through his earpiece. This time, there was no response in Han Hao's earpiece. The square on the monitor appeared calm, with no visible signs of anything unusual. The small command team, including Luo Fei, all had serious expressions on their faces. No one knew what was going to happen next.